Hi everybody, my name is Lacey Opdycke and I am here today to talk to you about the women Air Force service pilots of World War II. The women Air Force service pilots were a group of 1,074 women chosen and trained to be the first female pilots to fly planes for the war effort. Initially, over 25,000 women pilots applied to be a part of the program, but only 1,800 were chosen to take part in the United States Army Air Force pilot training. All women who applied to the program had to have at least 35 hours of flight training, be age 18 to 35, at least 5'4" tall, and they had to pass the Army Air Corps physical, or Army Air Forces at the time. Their basic training lasted 27 weeks and included more than 400 hours of ground school, along with 210 hours of flight instruction. The training was almost identical to that taken by male USAAF cadets. On September 14, 1942, female aviatrix and creator of the WASP program, Jacqueline Cochran, had finally been called back to the United States to implement her women pilot training program. Cochran was studying female pilots in Great Britain who flew for the Air Transport Auxiliary, as requested by General Arnold, before he granted permission to create a female pilot program in the United States. A press release issued by the War Department announced the appointment of Miss Jacqueline Cochran as director of the women's flying training within the Army Air Forces. However, it would not be until 1943 that Cochran's WASP program, operating fully under her control, was formed. Cochran had been pushing for the use of female pilots since 1939 when she wrote a letter to First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt explaining the ways in which that women pilots would be beneficial to the war effort. The WASPs were made up of two groups founded in 1942, the Women's Auxiliary Ferrying Squadron, or the WAFs, headed by Nancy Love, and the Women's Flying Training Detachment, or the WFTD, under the command of Cochran. The WAFs were used by the United States Air Transport Command to ferry military aircraft to various airfields around the United States. For a short period of time, both groups operated independently of one another until Cochran demanded in 1943 that the two groups be merged together under her own control, and that's what created the Women Air Force service pilots as we know them today. Members of WASP were skilled pilots who tested aircraft, ferried aircraft, and trained other pilots. Additionally, they served as the pilots in tow target exercises, meaning that they flew aircraft with canvas targets strung closely behind their aircraft while being fired upon by their male counterparts on the ground. Their purpose was to free male pilots for combat roles during the war, and despite various members of the armed forces being involved in the creation of the program, the WASP and its members had no military standing whatsoever. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the uniform of the WASP. Something that the early trainees would have worn is what I'm wearing today. I actually have a first pattern HPT coverall flight suit. These would have been handed down by the Army Air Forces from the male pilots down to the WASP. So they were actually wearing male flight suits, male coveralls that didn't fit them whatsoever. There's a lot of instances that we'll talk about a little bit later that this really messed with their ability to do their job. Additionally, I am wearing an A9 flight cap, which you can see here. It's canvas. It's not the leather flight caps, though they did wear those. And I also have the AN 6530 goggles on my forehead with the amber lenses. As for footwear, they kind of wore early on whatever they wanted to wear. So I have a pair of leather penny loafers on with cotton white socks. And in the background here, we have Mary Mountain Clark. She is wearing the Santiago blue uniform, and she has her WASP wings on her left-hand breast pocket. She has the beret, and this would be the dress uniform with the tunic that would have been worn with the skirt. There was also a battle jacket and trousers that they wore as well. Their mascot, Fifinella, was designed by Walt Disney for a proposed film from Roald Dahl's The Gremlins. This was a book that he had written. However, during the war, the Women Air Force service pilots asked permission to use the image as their official mascot, and Disney Company granted them the rights, so from that point on, she became the mascot of the WASP. Today we're at the Yankee Air Museum here in Belleville, Michigan, where they have the collection of Mary Mountain Clark displayed behind me. Clark was born in 1915 and grew up on a farm in West Des Moines, Iowa. As a child, she and her younger sister were assigned to turn on the aircraft marker lights on the Des Moines radio range tower. In 1939, she joined the civilian pilot training program and learned to fly. Prior to joining the WASPs in August of 1943, she had logged 76 hours already. One day, when Mary's instructor was demonstrating spins in a PT-19, her seatbelt became unclipped and she was thrown from the cockpit. This actually happened because she was wearing the hand-me-down flight suit, which there's a picture here that I'll zoom in on a little bit later, and it became all crunched up and her seatbelt didn't latch properly. So it became open during flight when they were doing those maneuvers, and she actually fell out and had to use her parachute. This is when she became part of the Caterpillar Club, which is an organization of military pilots who have made an emergency parachute jump from an aircraft. In February of 1944, she earned her WASP wings, and she served at the Las Vegas Army Air Base, where she taught instrument flying to commissioned pilots, and she also flew gunnery training missions in AT-6s. If you look here on her right breast pocket, she actually has her Caterpillar pin to represent that she is part of that club. And a little bit lower, she actually has the ripcord that she used in that accident. You and more than 900 of your sisters have shown that you can fly wingtip to wingtip with your brothers. General Henry Arnold, commander of the United States Army Air Forces, affirmed at the final graduation of the WASP on December 7, 1944. If ever there was a doubt in anyone's minds that women could be skillful pilots, the WASPs have dispelled that doubt. The WASP program was disbanded on December 20th, 1944, after the WASP bill, which would provide military status, was narrowly defeated in the House, 188 votes against 169 for. It wouldn't be until 1977, under President Jimmy Carter, that the WASP would become official veterans of the Second World War. In 2010, the WASP were presented with a Congressional Gold Medal by President Obama. It wasn't until 2016, after a long fight of Erin Miller, granddaughter of WASP Elaine Harmon, that WASP were permitted to be buried in Arlington National Cemetery. Thank you so much for listening to my talk today on the Women Air Force Service Pilots of the Second World War. I really appreciate it, and I hope you learned something new today. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment on this video or reach out to us on our Facebook page at facebook.com/Lauer Farms 1944. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have and provide more source information for you.